What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel Messianic Me TV. For today's video, we're going to be talking about another topic that you chose through my Instagram and YouTube community page. But before we go ahead and dig into this video, if you're not yet part of the family, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because in this channel we talk all things Torah, Halakha, Jewish thought, and more. If you end up enjoying this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, because it really does help the video and the channel. And of course, if you find that this video is share-worthy, make sure you share it with your friends and family. Alright, let's go. Alright folks, for today's video is a topic that kind of comes out of left field, to be honest with you, but it is something that I really wanted to talk about. And that is Miriam, or Mary, or you might know her as Maria. Of course, we all know Miriam is the mother of Yeshua. And there are so many things to talk about in regards to this topic. But I want to preface it all by talking about this. As many of you know, now that I've started to progress into the walk of Catholicism, the issue of Mary, or Miriam, was one of the biggest obstacles for me to overcome. From my outside perspective looking in, it looked like Catholics were just worshiping Mary and giving her a higher place of honor than she actually deserved. And it made me really uncomfortable to see that when everything else lined up, but this one thing just really bothered me. But it wasn't until I started looking into the Torah and I started looking at other Jewish writings that it all started to make sense. Of course, you line that up with the Brit Hadashah, and it's just another world of amazing things. But for today's topic, I'm gonna keep it very specific. I don't want to talk about all of the things that have to be said because it's impossible to. But in this one, I want to talk about the fact that Miriam was always a virgin. Now, if you're coming in from the Jewish world and you look at the prophecy in Yeshayahu that talks about the virgin that is going to bring forth this special character, you might be thinking, wait, it doesn't say virgin, it says young maiden. This is an argument that has been brought forth before, but if you really analyze this and being honest, we look at things like the Septuagint, which was used in many synagogues back in the day. We know that the word used for alma, which is in Hebrew, when you use the Greek, that people that translated it to virgin. Now let's put that aside and let's go back to the topic at hand. And that is the fact that Miriam was, yes, we all acknowledge, if you're a believer in Yeshua, that she was indeed a virgin when Yeshua was conceived in her womb. But many talk about the fact that she didn't remain a virgin. And the way that I want to present this to you is by first analyzing one crucial comparison that is made between Miriam and the Ark of the Covenant. If you look carefully into the work of Lucas, or Luke, in his rendition of the Gospel, you will notice that he makes many comparisons of Miriam and the Ark of the Covenant. For example, he explains how the glory of God overshadowed her, just like the glory of God overshadowed the tabernacle which contained the Ark of the Covenant. It's also made clear that in her womb she carried the Word of God. We also see in his book that just like David asked, how is it that the Ark of God would come to me? Elizabeth, Miriam's cousin, when Miriam comes to her home, she says, how is it that the mother of my Lord should come to me? Very similar words. We also find out through Luke that Miriam remained in the house of Elizabeth for 3 months. It's just such a random fact until you go back and you see in the Tanakh where it says that the Ark of God remained in the house of Obed-Edom for 3 months. A lot of similarities are drawn up. So with all these things taken into account, I really want us to dig in to understand a little bit more about the Ark of the Covenant. So what is this Ark? If we look in the book of Exodus, God commands Moshe to construct this box, this special box that on top of it had 2 statues of golden cherubim, and these inside will later house some very special objects, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I want to start first talking about the way that this item was built. We see through the Torah that this box, the ark, was constructed using gold and acacia wood. And if you analyze the specific details of these two elements, you will see something valuable. Number one, let's start with the gold. As you know, gold is a precious metal, the most precious metal in reality. It's so useful for many senses, but one of the things that outside of its beauty that makes it so useful is the fact that it is an uncorruptible, pure, beautiful metal. Next, we go to the wood that was used, acacia wood. And if you know anything about wood, you will know that acacia wood is a very, very strong wood. It's able to contain very high weight. It's also able to receive impact and remain pretty much undamaged. And it is also a water-resistant wood, which makes it also pretty much incorruptible because fungus cannot grow on it. So we have number one, gold, this metal that is basically incorruptible because it doesn't rust. And then we have this wood, acacia wood, which also is pretty much incorruptible. Both of these items, very high quality, very pure, and incorruptible. Now, if we look at ancient Jewish writings, we find out that the ark is actually made of three boxes. One smaller one, which is made out of pure gold, that goes inside of the second box, which is the acacia wood, and then another box that covers the outside, and that is another layer of pure gold. For this specific video, however, I want to focus on the fact that this Ark of the Covenant is made of wood, which is an organic, regular type of material and covered by this very precious gold. And in Jewish tradition, gold represents divine light, as well as the glory of God. So you could say that this organic matter, which is the acacia wood, was covered in the glory of God. We also know through the scriptures and Jewish tradition that the Ark of the Covenant was the holiest element in the tabernacle. It was so holy, in fact, that one time when it was being carried in a cart, it was being pulled by oxen. And you know this story if you look at the book of 2nd Shmuel, that as this Ark of the Covenant was being carried and pulled, all of a sudden the oxen stumbled, and before the ark fell, this man named Uzzah tried to put out his hand to stop the ark from falling. But what happens? He actually gets stricken dead by God himself right there. In other words, you are not pure enough to touch this ark. You are not holy enough to touch this, which is the holiest item in all of the tabernacle. This was such a grave matter that even David himself, King David, was in terror and shock. He was so scared, in fact, that he said, "How can the ark of the Lord come to me?" So he let it go to someone else's house, and that is Obed-Edom, which then we find out that it was a huge blessing for the house of Obed-Edom because he was blessed during the 3 months that the ark was there. Then David realized, oh man, maybe I should bring that ark back. But it was terrifying even for the King David. So with what ended up happening, we recognize that the ark was indeed truly holy and something that cannot be touched by anyone than those who God permits. And in this case, the only people that were able to carry it were the priests, but they couldn't even touch the box itself. They couldn't touch the ark itself. As a matter of fact, we know that in the description given to us in the Torah, that the ark contained these rings on its sides through which a golden pole would go through in both sides, and that is how the Levi'im were able to carry it. When they carried it, they also covered it in a blue sheet. Again, this is another topic for another day, but it was so holy that no one could touch it, and the only people that were able to handle it were people that didn't even touch it themselves, but rather they put these golden posts through the rings in the ark. Now let's reel it back in and let's talk about Miriam. If we look in the book of Luke, like I said before, it talks about how the Spirit of God overshadowed her. The glory of God was all over her, the same way that the glory of God was all over and surrounding, overshadowing the Ark of the Covenant while it was inside of the tabernacle. Now, when the Malach Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, shows up to Miriam and says the words, "Hail, full of grace. Now you can probably see what it's talking about. Just like the ark, not only overshadowed by the glory of God and not only covered in gold, which symbolizes the glory of God, we take it over to Miriam and we see that Gabriel himself says and calls Miriam full of grace or highly favored. It's hard to comprehend what this means until you compare it to what we know about the ark. We know that Miriam is indeed the ark also because if we look again at the ark, we know that it contained three very essential things. Number one, it contained the two tablets that Moshe brought down from Sinai. In other words, the Torah, the word of God written by him, the word manifested in our physical realm. Number two, it contained the golden jar of manna, which is the heavenly bread. And number three, it had the budding staff of Aaron, which is Aaron, the brother of Moshe. And this staff was basically what proved that the priesthood remained in Aaron's lineage. So you have the priesthood, you have the Torah, and you have the heavenly bread. Now we look at Miriam, and who does she bear within her but the Word of God himself, Yeshua, which is the Word of God manifested in our physical realm. Number two, we have the heavenly bread, as Yeshua calls himself the bread of life. And if we look at what we learn in the Eucharist, we know that Yeshua is this bread that we consume. And then number three, we know that Yeshua is also called our high priest. The Levitical priesthood was there as a temporary thing, but now we know that the priesthood is claimed by Yeshua and passed on to his apostles and the bishops continuing. So with this, we are able to see that the comparison is not just random. This is very specific. And what Lucas does is he shows us this by giving us examples like, for example, the fact that Miriam stayed in Elizabeth's house for 3 months, just like the ark stood 3 months in the house of Obed-Edom. We know that David says, "How is it that the ark of the Lord should come to me?" And the same kind of language, we see that Elizabeth says, "How is it that the mother of my Lord should come to me?" We know that Miriam was overshadowed by the glory of God and that she was covered in the glory of God. And we also see that the ark was the same. And there are many, many more comparisons that can be made. But these are just some to show you how the ark of the Old Covenant and Miriam, the ark of the New Covenant, are right there. One is a type and the other one is the fulfillment. Right about this point, you probably might be asking, okay, so what does this have to do with Miriam being an ever virgin? Why is it that she could not have had relations with her husband Joseph after Yeshua was born? Doesn't the Bible say that the brothers of Yeshua were around him? Doesn't it say that he had siblings? Very good question. But in fact, we know that the word used in Greek to show brothers of Yeshua is a word that, yes, it can mean physical, real brothers and sisters, but we also know that just like in that Greek word and in Hebrew, that word, ach, brother, it can simply mean a kinsman, somebody who is related to you in some way. And it can also just mean someone within your tribe or your people. And we use that kind of language even today. For example, when I go back to my friends and I call them my brothers or my bros, some of you might do that with some of your friends and some people that are not related to you. This we use in the English language, but this is not new. Even in Hebrew, people use this, and in Greek, they did as well. So this doesn't show that Yeshua had, in fact, real brothers. But that word right there in this discussion just shows that there could have been a potential, but not necessarily. But how do we know that for a fact she was not touched? Well, again, comparing it and bringing it back to the Ark of the Covenant, where we know that the Ark of the Covenant was so holy, so pure, chosen by God to be the vessel that carried his presence, that carried the bread of life, that carried the symbol of the priesthood, and that carried the word of God. Then we look at Miriam and we see that she within her was also the vessel that God had chosen to carry the word of God, the heavenly bread and the fulfillment of the priesthood. Then we can look at the story of Uzzah back again, and we see that the ark was so holy and pure that Uzzah, even though he was well intended, he definitely didn't have any bad intentions when he went to touch the ark. He was still stricken dead because he was just not worthy to touch it. Only God could touch the ark. Then we look at Miriam and we see that when Gabriel came to her and told her about her conceiving Yeshua, she said, "How can this be, since I know not man?" It proves to us that yes, she was a virgin then, but then take it back with the ark and we realize she was still the ark, which means Joseph, being a wise man like he was, he would not try to even touch, he wouldn't dare touch the ark of God, the ark of the new covenant. Only God could touch the ark. Now for this video, because I do want to continue talking about it, I am going to continue it in a live stream. So I know that you probably have questions and comments in regards to this video right now. So leave them in the comment section below. But I would appreciate it even more if you join me in my next video as we do a live stream to continue to dig into this topic that shows us how Miriam, being the Ark of the New Covenant, was so holy and so pure, the chosen one of God to be the bearer of God in the flesh. She is the Ark of the New Covenant, and she remained an ever virgin. All right, folks, I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a blessed week. Shalom.